Right. Save soil. I'll save soil. So, I am not sure why my stream keeps freezing. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. That is the Asatoma. I don't know what is that, mantra or a shloka. Anyway, that's Asatoma. And hopefully, if hopefully my stream won't freeze again. If it freezes, I apologize. It's a very frustrating experience to have to. I don't know. I guess I just gotta figure it out. I don't know what's wrong with it. Ever since I updated, it didn't work out. So we're gonna read Vashista. I just finished the book. I'm very proud of it. And it's an absolutely fabulous book. And it's a good benefit to read it, and everyone should check it out. Okay, where were we last time we spoke? Okay, let me go back for a bit and let's see. Let's just start reading. Okay, the Rama, I shall now describe to you the divisions of beings into the best, the worst, and the middling, as it happened in the beginning of the cycle of creation. The first and foremost among the creatures are born of noble practices. They are naturally good and devoted to good deeds. They reach liberation in a few lifetimes. They are full of the quality of purity and light. Then there are those who are full of impurity, in whom the worldly habits are strong and variegated, who will perhaps reach liberation in 1,000 births. They are the least among the good. Among them there are those in whose case liberation itself is doubtful in this world cycle. They are beings of dense darkness. The middling type are the ones who are full of the quality of dynamism and desire. When such people are close enough to liberation that on their departure from this world they reach it, they have a mixture of rajas and sattva. But when the rajasic tendency is so strong that it takes a little longer to sublimate it, they are purely rajasic. But when the rajasic tendency is extremely dense, then it partakes of darkness. In the case of those from whom liberation is so remote that it is doubtful, the quality of rajas partakes of the densest darkness. They who even after 1,000 births are still in darkness, unawakened, are known as beings of darkness. They may take a long time to reach liberation, but when this liberation seems to be at hand, when their tamas is mixed with sattva, if they are proceeding close to liberation, then their tamas is mixed with rajas. When, even after 100 births, liberation is another 100 births away, they are full of tamas, and if liberation is doubtful, they are in dense darkness. This chapter seems to suggest that sattva, rajas, and tamas in themselves are not obstacles to liberation, but the further modifications by wrong thought and wrong action push liberation away. All these beings have arisen in the absolute Brahman. when there was just a slight disturbance in its equilibrium, even as waves arise on the surface of the ocean, even as the space in a jar, the space in a room, and the space in a small hole are all integral parts of one cosmic space. All these are but the infinite being in which there are no parts, and as they arose in it, they merge in it. Thus, by the will of the infinite Brahman, all these seem to arise and then dissolve in it. Action and the doer of the action arose spontaneously in the Supreme Being at the same time, even as a flower and its fragrance arise simultaneously. However, it is only in the eyes of the ignorant that the creation of the jivas appears to be real, even as only the ignorant see blueness in the sky. To the enlightened, the expressions jivas are born of Brahman and jivas are not born of Brahman are both meaningless. Only for the sake of instruction is the dualism provisionally accepted. Otherwise, instruction is impossible. After having posited that jivas are born of Brahman, it is pointed out by the teacher that since the effect is non-different from the cause, jivas are non-different from Brahman. All these appear to be born of Brahman, even as fragrance is born of flower, and they re-enter into Brahman, even as one season enters into another. With every species of being that manifests itself in the universe, with every species of being that manifests itself in the universe is simultaneously born its natural behavior. It is only their ignorance of their own essential nature or self which leads to such behavior or action as to cause reaction in a later birth. With every species of being that manifests itself in the universe is simultaneously born its natural behavior. It is only ignorance of their own essential nature which leads to such behavior to cause reaction in a later birth. When you are born, your behavior is also born. When you are born, the type of your behavior is also born. So there's a built-in response. Absolutely. That's like a turtle knows how to survive immediately after it's born. A human being should be the exact same thing. A random thought. Rama said, "Holy sir, truly the declarations of sages whose minds are uncolored constitute scripture, and they who are pure at heart and whose vision there is no division are regarded as sages. The immature person can hope to see the light of truth only with the aid of scripture and of the knowledge of the nature of an enlightened person." Holy sir, we see in this world that the seed is born of a tree, and the tree grows from the seed. Is it then appropriate to say that without the seed of previous karma, diverse beings were born of the absolute Brahman? If you observe carefully, O Rama, you will see that it is only when the mind is involved in the action that there is the extension of the action into its own fruition. Hence, mind is the seed of action. Even so, when the cosmic mind manifested itself in the absolute Brahman, At that very instant, the natural tendencies of diverse beings and their behavior were born, and the embodied beings came to be regarded as jivas. There is no division between mind and action. Before it is projected as action, it arises in the mind, with the mind itself as its body. Hence, action is nothing but the movement of energy in consciousness, and it inevitably bears its own fruit. When such action comes to an end, mind comes to an end, too. And when the mind ceases to be, there is no action. This applies only to the liberated sage, not to others. If you observe carefully, O Rama, when you see that it is only when the mind is involved in the action that there is the extension of the action into its own fruition. Hence, mind is the seed of action. Even so, when the cosmic mind manifested itself in the absolute Brahman, at that very instant, the natural tendencies of diverse beings and their behavior were born, and the embodied beings came to be regarded as jivas. There is no division between mind and action. Before it is projected as action, it arises in the mind, with the mind itself as its body. Hence, action is nothing but the movement of energy in consciousness, and it inevitably bears its own fruit. When such action comes to an end, mind comes to an end too. And when the mind ceases to be, there is no action. This applies only to the liberated sage, not to others. Mind is only perception, and perception is movement in consciousness. The expression of this movement is action, and fruition follows this. Mind is an intention arising in the omnipotent and infinite consciousness. It stands between the real and the unreal, as it were, but inclined towards comprehension. Though non-different from the infinite consciousness, it thinks that it is. Though non-doing, it thinks that it does. Such is the mind, and these qualities are inseparable from the mind. Even so, the jiva and the mind are inseparable. Whatever the mind thinks of, the organs of action strive to materialize. Hence, again, mind is action. However, mind, intellect, egotism, individualized consciousness, action, fancy, birth and death, latent tendencies, knowledge, effort, memory, the senses, nature, maya, activity, and such other words are but words without corresponding reality. The sole reality is the infinite consciousness in which these concepts are conceived to exist. All these concepts have arisen when, by accidental coincidence, the infinite consciousness, in a moment of self-forgetfulness, viewed itself as the object of perception. When, thus veiled by nescience, the same consciousness views diversity in an agitated state and identifies objects as such, it is known as mind. That itself, when it is firmly established in the conviction of a certain perception, is known as intellect. When it ignorantly and foolishly identifies itself as an existent separate individual, it is known as egotism. When it abandons consistent inquiry, allowing itself to play with countless thoughts coming and going, it is known as individualized consciousness or mind stuff. So, we're almost done. Whereas pure movement in consciousness is karma or an action without independent doer, when it pursues the fruition of such action, it is known as karma. When it entertains the notion, I have seen this before in relation to something either seen or unseen. It is known as memory. When the effects of past enjoyments continue to remain in the field of consciousness, though the effects themselves are unseen, it is known as latent tendencies. When it is conscious of the truth that the vision of the vision is the product of ignorance, it is known as knowledge. On the other hand, when it moves in the wrong direction towards greater self-forgetfulness and deeper involvement in false fancies, it is known as impurity. When it entertains the indweller with sensations, it is known as the senses. When it remains unmanifest in the cosmic being, it is known as nature. When it creates confusion between reality and appearance, it is known as Maya. When it thinks I am bound, there is bondage. When it thinks I am free, there is freedom. The light of consciousness, eclipsed by a firm conviction in the existence of the mind, is indeed the mind. The mind embodies itself in diverse beings, humans, gods, demons, demigods, and celestials. It then spreads itself out as various forms of behavior, as also the cities and towns. Such being the truth, what is the use of examining all these external appearances? It is mind alone that is the proper factor for us to examine. For when we inquire into the nature of the mind, all the created objects or all appearances are seen to be its creations. Only the infinite consciousness remains as uncreated by the mind. When deeply observed, the mind is absorbed into its substratum, and when it is thus absorbed, there is supreme felicity. When the mind thus disintegrates, there is liberation, and there is no more rebirth, for it was mind alone that appeared to take birth and to die. Pray, Lord, how did all this take place in the pure infinite consciousness? How was it possible for the mind, which is apparently a mixture of the real and unreal, to arise in it? Rama, space is threefold: the infinite space of undivided consciousness, the infinite space of divided consciousness, and the physical space in which the material world exists. The infinite space of undivided consciousness is that which exists in all, inside and outside, as the pure witness of that which is real and of that which appears to be. The finite space of divided consciousness is that which creates the divisions of time, which pervades all beings, and which is interested in the welfare of all beings. The physical space is that in which the other elements exist. The latter are not independent of the first. The infinite space of undivided consciousness. In fact, the others do not exist, and this division of consciousness into three is arbitrarily suggested only while instructing the ignorant. The enlightened one knows that there is only one reality, the infinite consciousness. Rama, when that consciousness apparently thinks I am intelligent or I am inert, that is the mind. It is from this wrong notion that all the other physical and psychological factors that have been imaginarily created. It is from this wrong notion that all the other physical and psychological factors have been imaginarily created. So this passage is really describing it's describing the essence of mind. I like this passage over here. Mind is only perception, and perception is movement in consciousness. The expression of this movement is action, and fruition follows this. Mind is an intention arising the omnipotent and infinite consciousness. It stands between the real and the unreal, but inclined towards comprehension. Though non-different from infinite consciousness, it thinks that it is. Though non-doing, it thinks that it does. Such is the mind, and these qualities are inseparable from the mind. Even so, the jiva and the mind are inseparable. You are the mind. You're not this body. You're not this flesh. You're not even this mind. You're not the mind. But at this stage of Vashista, we are slowly coming into the realization that our goal is to come to the understanding that nothing really exists except for Brahman. What is Brahman? Brahman is the concept of Brahman is the concept of unity. It's like waves and then the ocean. The ocean is Brahman, and the individual creatures, as it were, they are mind, or they are apparently, because they're not different. Like, okay, the waves, you have the ocean, and then you have waves, and you have these ripples. The waves are not different from the ocean, because the ocean is the only thing that exists. The waves themselves are just part of the ocean. And likewise, that's what Brahman is. Brahman is the ocean. The world doesn't exist. It's just the ocean. And this is a very difficult it's a very difficult understanding to come to. So we start working towards that goal. We're working towards that realization, but first we have to come to the understanding that mind itself, you are the mind. We're coming to that realization first, that you are the mind. The mind is action, and your action is really just your mind. Even though you think you're doing something, you're not doing anything. It's just the mind creating the thought that you've done something. And yeah, we'll stop at that, because Vashista is a very, man, this is one of those it's one of those things that you can't just tell people the advanced. You can't just skip steps. The step from going to the realization that everything is Brahman, or everything is just one being, you have to first come to the understanding that you're not the body, you are the mind, and you're not your actions. The actions is just the mind. In fact, everything that's happening is just the mind. When you shut off the mind, the world doesn't exist for you. You are the only existence that matters. Your existence is the only thing that matters, because when you're dead, none of this matters. Your family doesn't matter, your kids don't matter, your stocks don't matter. Nothing matters when you're dead. And death, there is no death. But when you shut down the mind, you might as well not exist. So your existence is your mind. Once you lose your mind, you practically lose your existence. Later on, we'll come to the understanding that even you are not the mind. There's something, there's a layer of the mind, that you can go deeper into that, into the mind, because you're not the mind. But it appears that we're going towards that. That's the realization that we sort of read about. Anyways, now I'm just talking crazy. Thanks for hopping on the stream. Whoop. Om Anandamananda Karaprasannam Jnana Swarupam Nijabodharupam Yogendra Midyam Bhavaroga Vaidyam Shrimat Gurum Nityam Aham Bhajami. Om. Take care. Hashtags save soil.